Okay, today we're doing what's called P5, Prerequisites 5. And thankfully what we have today is pretty much just more heavy-duty factoring. And I'm going to go run you through a few practice problems, and it should be a kind of easy day today. So what you should use the extra time we have for is, like, at the end of the hour when we have extra time, ask me any questions you want during work time from P1, P2, P3, or P4, any of those things you didn't get, because the test on it is tomorrow. It does count, and it does count in the 85% category. So do your best on it, and it's actually a chance to get one of the easiest good grades in this class. You might as well lock in a good one for tomorrow by doing a little studying. All right, so let's do some factoring first. 4x squared minus 16. Hint, I would recommend looking and seeing if there's anything that comes out of both of them first. Look for a GCF. I may have you turn them in a minute, but everybody else is still working, so hold on a sec. All right, did you notice that 4 comes out of both of them, and therefore you have x squared minus 4. But if that's all you did, you haven't done enough. Factor it the rest of the way. And then when you've got it, turn it my way, and then zoom in on it, and make sure you're writing with a thick enough pen that a person could actually see it from up here. Good, 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 good. There's a few of you I haven't seen yet. I'm noting that. Good, 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 good. Okay. All right, good. So pretty much everybody had this one right. 4 times x plus 2 and x minus 2. All right. Let's try something a little harder. Let me think here. 4x squared plus 12x plus 8. First, look for something that comes out of everything. Did you get that a 4 comes out of everything? Good. Then you'd have x squared plus 3x plus 2. Do you stop there? No, you keep going. And you say 4, 2 parentheses, x and an x. That was the easy part. Now this is another easy part. Do you get that these two numbers have to multiply to 2? That's really important. Therefore, they must be a 2 and a 1. 2 and a 1. Now, if that's in the wrong order, I'd find out at the end when I checked it. Plus and a plus. And then I check it by going like this. Firsts, x squared. Outside, inside, 3x. Lasts, 2. Yay. I foiled it out. Raise your hand if you had that one right. Okay, good. Then the only new thing for today is you're going to factor stuff, and then they're going to say equals 0 at the end. Well, then that adds a little twist to it. That adds this twist. That there's now only 2 solutions then that will answer this equation. If this is equal to 0, there's 2 things you could put in that would make it work. And by factoring it, we are almost there. Let me show you a simpler one. X minus 5 and x plus 2 equals 0. Do you get that since this is a multiply right here, that if I could make this part right here equal to 0, then the whole equation would equal 0? So how do I make x minus 5 equal to 0? Fx equals 5. And how about this one? If x is equal to what? Negative 2. That solves this one and makes it equal to 0. Do you get they can't be the same, they can't be different things at the same time. But the answer is either this works or you could have that one work. And are they both solutions? Yes, they are. So I would say that and that. All right, so let me give you one. It should be like a really quick, easy one. Don't even have to write it down. Just write down what the 2 answers are. Right, x equals by them. X equals this, x equals that. The reason I don't want you to write this, like, is because it looks like a point, like x comma y, and that's not a point. I want your two answers to look like this. X equals this and x equals that. Tell me what you think the two answers are. Yes. You're on the right track. Yep. Okay, good enough. So I think you guys are getting it. 3 and 5 are the two answers. Sorry, 3 and negative 5 are the two things that would make it 0. 3 and negative 5. I'm going to step it up a notch. Let's say it's like this. One of those answers comes out really easy. What's the one easy answer? 5. X equals 5. But the other one's a little harder. What you do is you write an equation for yourself. You say 2x plus 3 needs to equal 0, and then you solve it. Go ahead and do that, and you'll have your answer. It'll be a fraction. Turn it my way. Yes, sir. Is there a negative on yours? I think it needs a negative. Yes. 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 Okay, good. Yes. Okay. That one came out to 2x. I subtract 3 from both sides. That's where the negative comes from. See? Negative 3. X equals negative 3 halves. There's my two answers. All right, so now let's go to the problem we were on, which was right there. And we came out with a 4 in the front. Do we have to make that equal to 0? No, a 4 isn't ever going to equal 0. It's only variables that can change. So this could equal 0 if x was equal to what? Negative 2. And this could equal 0 if x was equal to what? Negative 1. So those are my two answers. X equals negative 2. X equals negative 1. And if I go back to my original problem, if your life depended on it, like if you worked for a ruthless boss who was like, you make one mistake and you're out of here. I pay $500,000 a year, but you never make mistakes. Well, you might actually be like, it's worth it, $500,000 a year? Okay, but I'm going to double check my stuff before I bring him the answer. How would you be sure you were right? You take the negative 2 and you put it right there and right there. And let me just show you this one, that the negative 2 really works. Negative 2 squared is 4. 4 times 4 is 16. This is negative 24, and this is a positive 8. When I take the positive 8 and the 16, that adds up to positive 24. Then the negative 24 comes in, and you get 0. And so I double-checked it. It works. Do I make you do that? No. But when you have only 8 questions on your typical test in this class, because it's Marzano style, you have 4 R2s and 4 R3s, and you make one dumb mistake in there, you just have oftentimes cost yourself a whole grade. It's worth it if you only have 8 questions on your test, and your test you got like a whole hour to take it. It's worth checking. It's worth taking the time to double check. And if you make a dumb mistake, you'll realize, wait a minute, this is not working. And then you know something's wrong. Another thing we do in this class a lot is we like to throw in answers that are called extraneous, where you come up with the answer, and it seems like the answer should be these two, but one of them doesn't actually work when you plug it in. We're going to do that to you. So, like, unless you had plugged it in and checked it, you wouldn't even know you'd made a mistake. So, on the tests, I would take the extra time to check. Yes?
For those tests, like the format that we have last year, but the one
It's called Marzano style. Yes. Yes. And it's some people don't like it, but if you don't like it, it's only because you haven't figured out that it actually helps you. Because if you get, granted the question's a little bit harder, but if you get 3 out of 4 right in both sections, wouldn't that normally be a 75%? And yet you get an A on your test if you can get 3 out of 4 of the questions right in both sections. So, yes? Only because I was lazy. The negative 1, I don't know if that works or not really either, but I could check it by sticking in a negative 1 and doing that same thing. It just takes time, that's all. All right.
What do you do if it doesn't work?
What if you do it doesn't work? If it doesn't work at this stage of the game, we haven't gotten you to the kind where we have extraneous solutions. But if it doesn't work, all that would mean is you factored wrong or you solved it wrong. It'll be a hint to you that you did something wrong, because they will work. But later in the year, we have kinds where the answers, you've done everything correctly, and yet when you plug them in, one of them doesn't work, and then that's called an extraneous solution. But for today's homework, you're not that advanced yet. All I'm saying is you can check your answers pretty easy by sticking them back in. All right. We've covered everything we need to know. I'm going to actually have you start your homework with me. Let's do the first problem together. So everybody find your homework. Instead of doing practice ones, let's do real homework questions. So you're looking for P5 right now. And would you read me problem number 1?
2x squared plus 5x minus 3 equals 0.
All right, so the first thing you do is factor it, just like the other day. We had factoring. And the other day, we would have just factored it and you'd have been done. This time, you got to factor it and then take that extra step of setting them each equal to 0. Do you remember that this has to be a 2x and an x? Then, Mr. G, Mr. JG, what's the numbers that will multiply to negative 3? I know you know them. There's only 2. Negative 1 and 3. Now, could it be negative 1 and 3, but could it also be 3 or negative 3 and positive 1? So I'm not sure for sure which one's negative and which one's positive, but I know it's a 3 and a 1, and one of them's negative. Now I'm going to try this way and see if it works. I'm honestly just picking out of a hat here. And if I get lucky that outside and the inside match up, yay. But outside 2x, inside negative 3x, do you see how I'm not even close to positive 5? If I'm not even close, switch the numbers, not the signs. Okay, since I wasn't even close, I'm going to switch the numbers around, the 3 and the 1. Put the 1 here and the 3 here. Now we'll see if I'm close or not. Now the outside's 6x and the inside's negative 1. Hey, that's it, positive 5. Now, in the old worksheet, you'd have been done right here. But on this one, you have to take one more step. Set each little part equal to 0. I don't make kids write this out, but I probably should. Just because it's what you're really doing. You're setting it equal to 0. But if you just jump to write x equals negative 3, I'll be fine with that. On this one, I want you to write it out. You wouldn't believe how many kids just screw up the negative on this. Because they go, oh, I can tell it's going to be 1/2. And then it's really supposed to be negative 1/2. Or it's really supposed to be positive, and they get it backwards. So just write this one out. 2x minus 1 equals 0. If you have, this is such a simple equation. You know, it's like you've been doing this for 3 years. 2x equals 1, x equals 1/2. Positive 1/2. All right, so 1/2 and negative 3 are my two answers on number 1, for example. All right, now let's scroll down the page. You guys are, on your iPad, I guess it's still considered scrolling. And I think you'll see that some of these are not equal to 0 now. You know, all the way through number 9, they were always equal to 0. Look at number 10.
Number 3.
Oh, number 3. Let's go back to number 3 then. If it's not equal to 0, we need to fix it and make it equal to 0. Would you read me number 3, please? All you got to do is set it equal to 0, so you like move the 15 over to the other side. And this negative 15 becomes a positive 15 over here. And now it's equal to 0. And now you do the exact same thing we did before. Just got to factor it. Set it equal to 0. Has to be 0, though. This whole little trick doesn't work unless it's equal to 0. All right, I want to help you with one more, and that is number 10. Everybody get to number 10, please. Mr. T, would you tell me what number 10 is? Just read it to me.
4 minus 2x.
Then, when I subtract x squared from both sides to set it equal to 0, you end up with a problem. First of all, it's all jumbled up. So normally you want this x in the middle, so I'm going to move that over. Negative x squared minus 6x plus 4 equals 0, but I still got a problem. You can't factor things that have a negative in the front. So what do? You got to factor out a what? A negative 1. Now, could you have moved everything over to the other side? Yes, you could have. You could have moved everything over to the other side. That would have worked. But I'd also like you to know that you can just factor out a negative 1, and that'll work fine. X squared plus 6x minus 4 equals 0. And now remember that -1 doesn't really do anything out there from this point on. It's not going to give us a solution or anything. It just helps us to factor it. If there was a negative still here, I wouldn't be able to factor it. That's why we got it out of there. So now it's x, and how do I make a 4? Well, it's either a 2 and a 2, or it's a 4 and a 1. And the weird thing is neither one of those are going to make a 6, are they? All right. So if this thing doesn't factor, it's prime. But the problem is, that's not what they asked. They didn't ask you to factor it. What do the directions at the top of the page say to do? Solve it. So what that means is, how can you solve something that you can't factor? That's the one. Everybody write this down. X equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. We'll only do that to you a couple times. But if it won't factor, you can't just say prime this time, because the directions aren't to factor. The directions are to solve. And this thing can solve anything. This will solve any quadratic. So you don't have to worry about whether it factors or not. We just solve it. Now, what happens if it comes out negative on the inside of the square root? That just means your answer has an I in it. I don't know if you remember doing those before, but this won't, even that wouldn't stop you. So what are A, B, and C? Well, I'm going to go back up here, and this is it before you factored it. You got to have it in that form to know what A, B, and C are. So A is -1. -1 goes here. -1 goes here. B is -6. -6 goes here. -6 goes here. Technically in a parentheses. All of these are technically in a parentheses because variables are like empty parentheses. And then the C is 4. 4 there. And then I can go -6 makes +6 plus or minus the square root of -6 squared is 36. And then it's -4 times -1 times 4. That's going to be +16. All over 2 times -1 is -2. That's close, but I got to zoom in on my square root there. 6 plus or minus the square root of 52 all over -2. And again, I think a lot of you would be like, oh, I must be doing something wrong because it's getting so ugly. No, in pre-calc, you just have hard problems. We don't make them all come out nice. Sometimes they come out nasty like this. Okay, now square root of 52, can that go further? Maybe. Let me think. I don't know if there's anything that goes into 52. It's not, 3 doesn't go into it. 4 doesn't go into it. Wait a minute, does 4 go into it? Yeah, I think 4 does go into it. Because 4 goes into 40, and 4 goes into 12, and 40 and 12 make 52. Yeah, this is a nasty one, because 4 goes into that. So you go 6 plus or minus the square root of 4 times the square root of something, which makes 52. Square root of 4 times, what's 4 times what makes 52? 4 times 13. Nasty. All right? Now, 6 plus or minus, and the square root of 4 is really 2, root 13, all over -2, and you're still not done. Ah, the beauty of pre-calc. Like 6 steps. This is one of my top 20s that I'm asking you to learn how to do. Remember? There's a problem like this on every top 20 sheet that I do. Because this is a pain in the butt. And you need to get good at it. All right. So I see a 2 and everything. 2 goes in there 3 times, 2 goes in there once, and 2 goes in there once. Final answer, 3 plus or minus root 13 all over -1. And actually, that's not even done. Why? Because when you're dividing by 1, aren't you just switching the sign? So then that's -3 plus or minus root 13. And this is really close, except there's still one thing. Plus and minus a negative. Have you ever seen a plus, minus, minus? There's no such thing. Nope. It's a good question. But if I'm going to do the positive of the square root of 13 and the negative of the square root of 13, Do you get that another negative doesn't even really do anything? I'm already doing the positive of it, and I'm doing the negative of it. And if I do the negative of it again, I'm really back to the positive of it. So anyway, moral of the story, if you ever come up with a plus minus a minus, that is irrelevant because we're already doing the positive of it and we're already doing the negative of it. You don't need that negative sign. So there's your final answer, -3 plus or minus the square root of 13. That's what separates pre-calc from HA. Because in HA, honors or regular, we would have been done back here at the most. I mean, after we made you the quadratic formula, it would have been done pretty much. Here we got to do so much simplifying of this thing to make it nice. So
What if you honestly did 3 plus or minus the 13?
this one, it depends. If we were in a Marzano style test, that is not reduced all the way. You would have had to lose the point. If it was homework, I'd have given you like half off. But it's not reduced all the way. Because you can divide by 1, can't you? And dividing by -1 just changes the sign. So it's just as bad as, Josh, if you'd left it like this, 7 over 1. It's just 7. Or 7 over -1, you should really say -7. Yes?
Do we like solve with a calculator and do the plus or minus?
You would not need to do anything with a calculator on this. You'd leave it alone. I know what you mean. That has a decimal. We don't make you do that.
And then if there's like an x, or this problem,
Sorry.
if you take out an x, it's like it's x3, and you can simplify an x out of it.
If you had this and you take an x out, you would have 15x squared left.
Yeah, but would the x equal to x to 0 on the outside of it?
Oh, okay. If you have one like this, for example, there's an x on the outside. Now, wouldn't this be exact same as if I had parentheses right here? Would you agree that that's the exact same thing? And so each of them need a 0. So what makes this equal to 0? X equals 0. What makes that equal to 0? X equals -3. Okay? So yes, if there's an x on the outside, it counts. And you need an answer for that. If you have an x and another x and another x, then there's 3 answers for this one. Yep, this one, and this one. Remember, if it was just a number like a 7 or something, that you can't change. Then there would be no answer for that 7. That's a 7. You can't change it. But if there's an x out here and an x in here and an x in there, yeah, you can have 3 answers for these. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
So if you go back to the original problem,
This guy?
yeah, how do you know which
All right. Once I set it equal to 0, right here, as soon as you have it set equal to 0, that tells you this one's A, this one's B, and that one's C. Only after it's set equal to 0. Any other questions? Those are all good questions. Yes, ma'am.
We have a question like this one.
Absolutely. This is not, this test isn't that bad. We softened it up from last year because last year it was just really, really nasty. But this year we've softened it up enough to be really honest with kids. Like if you struggle on this, run away because it's doable. Last year we made it really hard and then you had to say, well, if you got a 15 out of 20, that's actually really good. I mean, now we've got easy questions on the test, but that would still be considered an easy question. It just has reducing. It's just the only thing that made that hard was reducing at the end, simplifying the fraction. Yes? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I have to rearrange this thing. Thank you for saying that. This is what gives me A, B, and C. Sorry. That's what gives me A, B, and C. That's A, that's B, and that's C. Sorry, you have to have the X in the middle there. Yeah. Do you get the difference? They're just rearranged. This is moved over. So, that work now? All right, I've done a couple of your homework problems. I wanted to help you with that one because I knew it was nasty. So now the rest of the homework is ready to go. So let me know if you need more help. Apologize for the mistake there, but I'm human. You are too. It's going to happen.